Hilchos Issurei Biah Perek Shnayim ve'esrim. Laws of Forbidden Relationships, chapter 22, the final chapter. Today we conclude this first set of laws of the fifth book of the Rambam. And the topic for today is another general topic as it relates to forbidden relationships, and that is Yichud. Yichud, I translated on the screen as the prohibition against being in seclusion with certain women. That's how I translated it. We're going to see there's multiple levels. How Yichud used to be, the original prohibition, and then twice in history it was improved upon. It was enforced even more to more and more levels as the sages saw the need to do so. It says that Rambam halacha aleph asur lihisyached im erva min ha'arayos. It's forbidden to find yourself alone with a woman who is forbidden as an erva. That means the highest level biblical prohibition. Bein zekena, bein yalda. Doesn't matter if she's old or young. Shadavar zeh goyreim legalois erva, because this causes to have a forbidden relationship. It's kind of like in the beginning of yesterday's chapter, the Rambam quoted the verse that says lois sikrevu legalois erva. You can't even come close to having a forbidden relationship. This is another way that can bring close to forbidden relationships. Chutz, with one exception. Actually, more than one exception. Meha'em im beno v'ha'av im bitoy. A mother and son and a father and daughter, they're allowed to be alone. V'habal im ishtay nida. And a husband can be alone with his wife when she's in the nida state. V'chasan shepersa ishtay nida. Kaidem sheyival. What if there's a groom who his wife became a nida before he has a chance to have relations, and they never even lived together as married ever? Asur lihisyached ima. It's actually forbidden for the husband and wife to be alone. Elohi yeshena bein hanashim, v'hu yashen bein ha'anashim. The Rambam quotes the Talmudic law, which is that the husband and wife that night, the first night after their wedding, need to sleep separately. The man sleeps with men, in other words, with his family. The woman sleeps with other women. They don't sleep alone. Today in Shulchan Aruch, the custom is that they bring a young boy and a young girl to accompany the husband and wife to their own apartments. They can stay alone, but they have to have somebody else in the house. That's the common custom. If the husband has relations once, and then she became a nida, mutar lihisyached ima. Since they had relations once, now it's allowed for them to be alone. Sunday morning, forgive the background noise. Halacha beis. Lo nechshedu Yisrael al mishkav zechur va'al habehema. Jewish people are not suspect to have relations with other men or with an animal. Lefichach, therefore, ein isur lihisyached imahem. There's no prohibition to find yourself in seclusion with another man or with an animal. If a Jew decides to distance himself even from being alone with men or with animals, that's praiseworthy. But it's not required behavior. The greatest of our sages would distance animals from themselves so they shouldn't be alone with the animals. The Rambam gives us a general statement, and that is that the prohibition against being in seclusion with women that are prohibited as an erva comes straight from oral tradition. There's somewhat of an argument as to how biblical it is. One opinion says it's literally scriptural. It's a biblical prohibition. The Rambam understands that it's somewhat an oral tradition that can be traced back, and you have support for it in the Torah. It's only called an asmachta. I mean, it's a prohibition of rabbinic nature learned from oral tradition with support from the Torah. Now, as I said before, there was a later stage. Halacha Gimel, Kishe'era Maise Amnon v'Tamar, when the tragic episode of Amnon and Tamar happened. They were half-sisters, and Amnon desired Tamar, so he faked an illness. He asked Tamar to prepare a meal for him, and while she was preparing a meal, while she was serving him, he did what he shouldn't have done. So at that point, Gazar Davidu Beis Dinai al Yichud Pnuya. David and his court improved the decree. They now said, not only is a woman who's biblically prohibited to you, that's who you can't be in seclusion with, but even an unmarried girl. They decreed against seclusion with an unmarried girl. Even though she's not an erva, she has no biblical prohibition. She went under the umbrella of the prohibition against seclusion with those women who are like an erva. Then it went further. Shammai v'Hillel, the great sages, Shammai and Hillel together, even though they had so many arguments, this one they agreed on. Gazru al Yichud Kusis. They decreed against the prohibition, against the seclusion with a Gentile woman. They felt that Jews and Gentiles shouldn't be alone in a room. Nimtza, which at this point means that it now turns out, Kol HaMisyachedim Isha. she'asur lihisyachid imam, any man who secludes himself with a woman who it's forbidden to be in seclusion with, and at this point that includes bein Yisraelis, bein Kusis, whether it's a Jewish woman or a non-Jewish woman, in any case that it's forbidden, makin es shneyan makas mardos ha'ish v'ha'isha. The court will administer rabbinic lashes to the man and the woman, umachrizin aleyan, and we're going to publicly announce what they did to shame them, so they don't further engage in such actions. Chutz me'eshes ish.
There's a difference in the girsa here with the kusi.
Kusis, yeah, I know. In this Rambam, whenever they refer to Gentile, they use the word kusi or kusis. Other Rambams, it's akum or goy, but or goya. Yeah, the intention is the same. The point is, if you go into seclusion with a forbidden woman, you're going to get a public announcement about yourself, except for, counterintuitively, one woman, chutz me'eshes ish, with the exception of a married woman. If a man finds himself alone with a married woman, not allowed, sha'afal pisha asur liyisyachid ima, even though it's forbidden to be alone with her, im nisyachid ein leikin. If they do go into seclusion, they do not get lashes. And the commentaries explain at least it means the woman. She doesn't get lashes. The man you can give lashes to. The reason that you don't give the woman lashes is because not to spread a bad rumor that she committed adultery, which could then have an effect on the kids. If the whole town knows this woman was married and engaged in questionable behavior, now people are wondering, what are her kids? Are her kids illegitimate or not? So the Rambam says we don't give the woman lashes so it doesn't become public knowledge. The man you could, because the man you can just give him lashes anonymously. You say, look, this man was engaged with a married woman. We're not saying who it is, but we don't care if he is shamed. Halacha dalet. Kol isha she'asur lihisyachid ima. A general rule, a general caveat about the rules of Yichud. Whenever it's forbidden to be alone with a woman, im haisa ishtoi imai. If the man's wife was with him, harezum muteres liyisyachid. Now the woman could be alone with this man, because his wife, who's with him, will protect him from doing anything wrong. Aval loy tisyachid Yisraelis im hakusi or im hagoy. A Jewish woman should not go into seclusion with a non-Jewish man, va'afal pisha ishtay imay, even if his wife is with him. She'ein ishtay shel kusi or shel goy mishamartay ve'ein lahen busha. The wife of a Gentile is not going to guard him from doing something wrong. They have no shame, and it's possible that the Gentile man will do something questionable with the Jewish woman, even if his wife is in the room. Yeah. Halacha hey v'chein ein moisrin tinok Yisrael lekusi or legoy lelamdei sefer or lelamdei umnos. It was forbidden to give a Jewish child to a non-Jewish teacher, lelamdei sefer or lelamdei umnos, to teach him a book. In other words, to teach him wisdom, literature, or a craft. Mipnei shekulon chashudin al mishkav zechur. All Gentile men were suspect about homosexuality. We don't deposit our animals in the, literally it means hostels, but an inn, belonging to a Gentile. Even male animals with male Gentiles, female animals with female Gentiles. Again, they're suspect on homosexuality. We don't want to, or sodomy in this case, we don't want to encourage that behavior. We do not hand over an animal, beast, or bird to a non-Jewish shepherd. Again, even male animals to male shepherds, female animals to female shepherds. They're all suspect on bestiality. And we already explained, and it's going to be more at length in the last book of the Rambam, that one of the prohibitions on a Gentile, as part of the 7 Noahide laws, is that they are forbidden to marry another man or an animal. So not only are we concerned for this behavior, but it's actually on us not to enable it. V'nemar, it says, do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Literally, of course, it means don't make a blind man trip. But the sages have received the tradition that it means don't enable somebody who's unaware, or who may be unaware, to do a sin. Halacha Zayin says that what's wrong with giving a female animal to a female Gentile shepherd? We even said yesterday, females with females aren't considered relations. Says that all the Gentiles have a presumption of being adulterous. The female shepherd is going to have somebody come and fool around with her. when the adulterer comes to find her, it's very possible that he won't find her and will engage in bestiality with the animal. Or even if he does find her, he'll go afterwards and have bestiality. And therefore, around the non-Jew, the laws are extra strict. One single woman should not be in seclusion even with many men, unless one of the wives of one of the men is there. A single man should not find himself alone with multiple women. Multiple men and multiple women together, we're not worried about seclusion. That's not considered a privacy issue. But even in a party where there's multiple men and multiple women, if the men are meant to be outside and the women are meant to be inside, or the opposite, the men are meant to be inside, the women are meant to be outside, and one woman goes to be with the men, or one man goes to be with the women, at that point it becomes forbidden on account of seclusion. Even a man whose job, who makes a living from dealing with women, it's forbidden to him to ever be in seclusion alone with a woman. What's his solution? What should he do if his business requires it? So the Rambam says, you got to choose what works for you. Either continue your job, but keep your wife with you. So bring your wife to work every day. Or change your job. There's no way around this. You cannot be alone with a woman. If you have to be alone, quit your job. Halacha test, we remember this chart, having it multiple times in the last two books. These are called the 5 women who hate each other. This is the woman here, and she's got a co-wife, she's got a mother-in-law, she's got a stepdaughter, she's got a sister-in-law, and a sister-in-law from her husband's brother who could potentially become her yivama, potentially become a co-wife. So the Rambam says, Mutar lihisyached im shtei yivamis. It's permitted to be in seclusion with 2 women who are both yivamis, both in the wings, waiting for yibum. Oyim shtei tzares, or with 2 co-wives. Oyim isha v'chamoisa, or with a woman and her mother-in-law. Oyim isha bas bailo, or with a woman and her stepdaughter. Oyim isha bas chamoisa, or with a woman and the daughter of her mother-in-law. We call this a sister-in-law, essentially. That would be the daughter of the mother-in-law. Because these women hate each other. And they will not cover for each other. If any of them will sin with this man, the other one will certainly report it. It's also permitted to be alone with a woman who has a child with her, a female child with her, small. She's old enough to know what relations are, but she's young enough that she won't be part of it. So now, this girl will protect the older woman. The older woman is not going to commit adultery in front of her, because she knows the child is going to reveal her secret. Halacha yod, tinoikes mi bas shalosh ulamata. The tinoik mi ben teisha ulamata. A girl, 3 years old and under, and a boy, 9 years old and under, mutar lihisyached ima, and it's permitted to go into seclusion with them. Shaloi gazdur ela al yichud isha haruya lebia. Because the sages, even the sages who created extra prohibitions, they only decreed on seclusion with a woman who is fitting to have relations with. The isha haruya lebia. And so to a man who's fitting to have relations with, the minimum age for a boy is 9 years old, for a girl is 3, as we've seen before. Halacha yud aleph androgynos einem misyached im hanashim. A hermaphrodite. He has both organs. He cannot be in seclusion with women. But if he did go into seclusion, we can't give him lashes. Because he's a doubt. We don't know, is he a man or a woman? But a man could go into seclusion with a hermaphrodite or with a tumtum. His genitalia are blocked. There's no worry of the man doing anything questionable. Halacha yud beis eishes ish shahaya baila ba'ir. This is a famous, another caveat as it relates to Yichud. A married woman whose husband is in the city. Husband in the city means he's close by, he's in proximity, it's conceivable that he would enter the room at any time. This woman doesn't need to worry about being alone with other men. Because the fear of her husband is on her. And she's always worried he might walk in. But if the man who she's with alone now is familiar with her, they grew up together, or they were related, he cannot go into seclusion with her, even if her husband's in town, because we're worried that he's too familiar, and he's not going to be worried about the husband. But Similarly, if a person is in seclusion with a man and the door in the room that they're in is open to the public thoroughfare, there's no worry for yichud purposes. By the way, it's fascinating today, let's say with security cameras. How does a security camera influence yichud? So, if there's a camera in the room and you know that it's going to be checked consistently, then it actually precludes yichud.
Yeah, they say there's cameras all around the house and outside even.
Right. But what if you can see from the inside who's coming in? Then today's Rabbanim say it's actually forbidden. If there's a security system in your house where you can see when somebody's coming, it'll sense them exactly. A little warning.
Notification.
Yes.
Someone's approaching the house.
Then it's actually forbidden. Because then we say that you now have advanced knowledge of someone coming. You're going to be able to do and then cover your actions. So it could actually work against you in a way. There's another question that people ask. What if you give out a bunch of your house keys? What if you give out house keys to all your neighbors?
Right.
Okay, or your friends? And you say, you guys can come into my house whenever you want.
Right.
So then yichud is less problematic. Let's say you're bringing an electrician into your house, right? Husband's out for the day. The wife is at home. The electrician's coming to fix the fuse box. The plumber's coming to fix the sink. Right. So the fact that multiple people have access to the house and can come in at any time makes it less problematic. But even there, it has to be during the daylight hours. It can't be during the late night hours. It has to be likely that they're going to come in. If it's unlikely, then it doesn't work, even if you give out 100 keys. Halacha Yud Gimel Misha Ein La Isha, a single man. He doesn't have a wife. Lo Yilame Tinaika should not be a teacher for young kids. Because the mothers of the kids come to school to pick up their kids. And this is going to cause them to be tempted by women. Also a woman should not teach young boys. Because of the fathers who come to pick up their kids. And they may end up in seclusion with her. On the other hand, if you have a married teacher, he doesn't require that his wife should be with him in the school. It's enough, she'll be at home. He teaches in his room, knowing that his wife is in the city. That itself is going to help to preclude any yichud issues. Halacha Yudalit Tiknu Chachamim, the sages enacted. That in the lavatory, which used to be in an outhouse in the outdoors, women should talk to each other when they're in the lavatory. So no man should enter there and cause a yichud issue. Of course, today, when bathrooms are in buildings, and even there you have gender-separate bathrooms, this law doesn't apply. Although women are free to talk in the bathroom if they'd like, but it's not a law. Halacha Tezvav, Ein memanin afilu adam nemon v'kosher. We don't appoint even a trustworthy kosher man, a big tzaddik, liyos shemer chatzer sheyesham nashim, to be a guard for a courtyard of women. Even if you're standing outside. She'ein apotropos la'arayos. Nobody can be a guardian against promiscuity. I don't care how holy you are, I don't care how righteous you are. But asur la'adam lamanis apotropos al beisai. It's also for the same reason forbidden for a man to appoint a male caretaker over his house, so he doesn't lead his wife to sin. The Midrash says, if not for the fact that Potiphar would have appointed Yosef, the whole incident with his wife wouldn't have happened. Only because he made him into a caretaker. It's forbidden for a Torah sage to live in a courtyard that has a widow. Even if he doesn't go into seclusion with her, because of suspicion. You don't want to create any suspect situations. Unless, of course, he had his wife with him, then it's a different story. A widow should not raise a dog because of suspicion. Neither should a single woman acquire for herself male slaves, even minors, because of the suspicion. This is a class given in a yeshiva. This is not a class that's allowed when it comes to the topics of forbidden relationships. We don't expound the secrets, the hidden matters, which means the parts that are not explicit in the Torah about forbidden relationships in a group of three. Why not? When you have three people listening to a teacher, so one of the students could get into an argument, right? He could be busy with the teacher's questions. The other two start talking with each other. That happens in a class, right? One guy asks a question. Before you know it, the other students are talking with each other. Their minds are no longer clear to hear what the teacher is going to be answering. And because Shadaita Shal Adam Kroiva Eital Arayis, a person's mind is very close to himself when it comes to forbidden relationships. We all want to hear what we want to hear. In Nistapik Ledavar Shashama, if one of the students is going to be in doubt whether he heard correctly or not, Meira Lahaka is going to teach himself leniently. So we're worried when you have an odd number of students or more, one of them will be occupied with the teacher, the other two are not going to hear properly. Therefore, when it comes to these secret matters, we only give a lecture in the presence of two students, or one. So that the one, even if the other one asks a question, the other student will still be free to listen. And he'll know what he's hearing from the teacher. So how come this Rambam class is allowed? Because it's not the secret matters. This is the halachas of forbidden relationships. But if we were going to learn the Torah in depth and understand the new laws from the words of the Torah, then it wouldn't be so simple to have a group of three or more. Halacha Yud Ches, the Rambam concludes these laws with a general reflection. Ein lecha davar b'chal haTorah kula. There is nothing in the entire Torah shehu kasha l'reiv ha'am lifresh that's more difficult for Jews to separate themselves from ela min ha'arayos v'habiyos ha'asuros. Forbidden relationships and the ervas, the forbidden women. Amru Chachamim, the sages said, it's so hard. B'shah shenitztavu Yisrael al ha'arayos bachu. When the Jews got the commandments against forbidden relationships, they cried. V'kiblu mitzvah zu b'tar'omes u'b'chiyah. They accepted this mitzvah with complaint and with crying. Shenemar, as it says, Boichel lemishbechesav. Moshe saw the Jewish people crying by their families. Literally, it means they were divided by family and crying. But the explanation is, al iske mishpaches. They were crying about family matters. When they heard the laws of the family, they weren't so happy. The Amr Chacham, the sages also said, Gezel va'arayis, nafshe shal adam mis'avalehen u'mechamadatan. Theft and forbidden relationships, it's natural for a person to lust them and to desire them. No such thing as a Jewish community in every generation that won't have some Jew that's too promiscuous with his relationships. This is not a problem of today, it's a problem of old. There was always somebody in the community that was messing around. The Oid Amru Chacham in the sages also said, Roiv begezel. Most people trespass, stumble when it comes to theft. Miut ba'arayas. A minority stumble when it comes to forbidden relationships. The hakel ba'avak lashon hara, and almost everyone is stumbling when it comes to telling things that are questionably lashon hara. Chaf lefichach, therefore, because it's so difficult, because it's so prevalent, it's proper for a person to control his inclination in this matter, and to get himself used to being in a state of extra holiness, and pure thoughts, and the proper mind, and to be saved from these sins. He should be extra careful from being in seclusion with women. That's the greatest cause. Even the greatest sages would tell their students, watch me with my daughter. Make sure I don't go into seclusion with her. Watch me that I don't go into seclusion with my daughter-in-law. They spoke about this openly, to teach their students that there's no shame in these matters, and they should distance themselves from seclusion. Talmud even says that there was a story of a big rabbi, who made this statement. He said to one of his students, watch me with my daughter-in-law, and the student laughed at him. So what are you being paranoid? You're the big rabbi. And it was revealed shortly afterward that this student himself had relations with his mother-in-law. In other words, he was laughing about it, but really it was just a cover. Halacha Chaf Aleph, v'chein yinhag lehisrachek min haschok u'min hashichrus u'midivrei agavim. It's also proper to accustom yourself to be distant from too much joking, from too much intoxication, and from too much flirtation. These are all big causes and are step stools leading to forbidden relationships. And a man should never stay single without a wife. Because behaving like that will cause you great purity to be married. And at the greatest point, the sages said, bottom line is, clear yourself, clear your thoughts, and be involved in Torah study, and expand your mind with the wisdom. You know where thoughts of forbidden relationships have their strongest point? In a mind that's empty from wisdom. When your mind is empty, of course, it's going to crawl in undesirable things. And when you have the wisdom, it says, and there's a verse that compares it to a proper relationship with a woman, Ayeles ahavim v'yalas chen. It's a beloved gazelle. It arouses favor. Dadeha yiravucha b'chol eis. Her breasts will satisfy you at all times. Ba'avasa tishke tamid. You will be obsessed with her love. In other words, you'll be obsessed with Torah love, and you won't have any improper thoughts coming into your mind. Brich rachamana desayan. Blessed be the merciful one who grants us assistance. Mazel tov for concluding the laws of forbidden relationships.